So, Darren, I learned some sign language when I was in school. I
Hmm.
remember some of the words, but I can't remember all the words. I remember please, help, good, bad, which, what, who,
Huh.
where, why, boy, girl,
Hmm.
but, just not all of them.
Okay, so you just select words. What was it? What does this mean?
All that. That means you're a pretty cool guy.
Okay, cool.
So, Darren, I learned some sign language when I was in school. I
Hmm.
remember some of the words, but I can't remember all the words. I remember please, help, good, bad, which, what, who,
Huh.
where, why, boy, girl,
Hmm.
but, just not all of them.
Okay, so you just select words. What was it? What does this mean?
All that. That means you're a pretty cool guy.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, you ready? Gotta find my cast. Okay. And welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Darren Lundberg.
And I'm Johnny Craddock.
And today we'll be covering Mr. Holland's Opus, directed by Stephen Herek and starring Richard Dreyfuss, Glenne Headly, Jay Thomas, Olympia Dukakis, William H. Macy. Credited as W.H. Macy in here for I guess you thought you were like I credit myself as D.W. Lundberg. I guess it's hoity-toity kind of way to do that.
I've seen the
Alicia
credit Bill Macy too.
Bill
So
Macy.
he,
Okay.
yeah.
He's a jack of all trades, I guess. All right. So Alicia Witt, Jean Louisa Kelly, Terrence Howard shows up for a little bit. And
Hmm.
then it says that Forrest Whitaker is in here as a cameo, but I've never
It's
been
his,
able to find him.
it's his brother.
Yeah,
Isn't it
yeah.
his brother?
Yeah, it's the who's the kid, the Bobby Tidd, right? It's
Yeah.
Damon Whitaker, but like
It
he's
looks
supposed
like
to,
him though.
yeah, he's supposed to show up at the end, but I never caught him. Anyway, so this Mr. Holland's Opus. I know we kind of at the end of the last episode that we did, we mentioned that we are going to cover Goldeneye, but things didn't actually fall through yet with Andrew and with Gareth, and so we're going to go ahead and try to figure out how to fit that in later, and so we didn't want to keep this kind of too big a gap in between episodes. So I just suggested let's go ahead and do Mr. Holland's Opus because
Yeah.
this is a movie that I don't know if it was huge. I don't know if it's something that comes like up in conversation a lot, but when we saw this movie as a friend group, so me, you, Mike, and Mike, and I think Jason was a part of that, it affected us in the moment, I guess you could say. And I remember watching the movie and just again getting really emotional and thinking about all the schooling we were in. What are your memories about Mr. Holland's Opus?
Yeah, I do remember that. I remember seeing it in the theater with everybody. Um, And I do remember crying at the end.
Hmm.
And so that's something that still happens. Every time I watch this movie, I get teary-eyed,
Yeah,
I get kind of
yeah.
choked up. Probably because, being a musician, it means a lot to me to see another musician feel like he's worth something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
Hmm.
know, just you kind of put yourself in their shoes and
Right,
you just imagine you being the one to compose something great, and just,
right.
yeah, to watch him get emotional, I get emotional. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it affected me big time. I mean, I really liked it when I first saw it.
Right. And it's still, I think it's still watching it. I've watched it several times since 1995. Like you said, I think my thing with the ending is I like that that's your perspective of it. And I like how it's a universal perspective. It's kind of like Field of Dreams, kind of reducing everybody to tears. My big trigger is characters who feel like they're at fault for something or that they wrong somebody somehow. And they've let that just become their whole personality. Like they feel like they're worthless. And so the fact that it whittles Holland down so he feels completely worthless and superfluous and nothing matters. And then all of these people in an auditorium full of people teach him, no, you are worth something. You meant something to me as a group. That's what gets me. Just finally him realizing, seeing in his face that I have affected lives and I have made it. Like Gertrude Lang, the Honorable Gertrude Lang says, like, we are your opus, right? We are your composition. We're everything we are because of you. I think that gets me really emotional.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's
yeah.
kind of the same message as like It's a Wonderful Life, right? Like you don't
Hmm.
realize how important your life is and how your life touches others
Yeah.
and unless you kind of are shown or see it, firsthand. I think the same thing happens in this movie where he realizes his life did matter, and he, affected a lot of people.
Yeah, and again, that's a thing that gets you emotionally, kind of affects the tear ducts or whatever. But again, I think, like I said, I've watched this multiple times because I like getting that feeling. I think you have to watch the whole movie to get that particular feeling. You just can't put that scene in and get the same impact. It's the whole experience watching the movie and getting to that point. But even though there are some kind of quibbles that I have, say, with the filmmaking or some of the storytelling performance and stuff, I think it's Richard Dreyfuss still anchors this movie. We're not telling any of our listeners or watchers stuff they haven't heard before, but we're doing a bucket list season of 90s movies. And my bucket list reason for covering Mr. Holland's Opus is I think this is Dreyfuss's best. It's a tour de force. I don't think we've used that word a lot, but it's a tour de force performance. And especially in today's age, because John, we've got so much digital de-aging going on, and it never, unless it's say Michael Douglas in for 30 seconds in Ant-Man, or Kurt Russell, a young Kurt Russell at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy
Or
2.
or what Jeff Bridges in Tron.
Oh my gosh, that absolutely does not. There are cases and ways to do it where it kind of works, but as a whole, I just don't think it ever works, the digital de-aging. So the fact that they do something with the makeup, something with Dreyfuss's posture in here, it's just masterful that it sells these 30 years. And that's my bucket list reason for wanting to cover this movie. But is I guess we can start there. Richard Dreyfuss, is that your selling point? I mean, do you still think of this performance as a great performance from him?
I think it's a great performance, and I think it was definitely deserving of the nomination that it got.
Yeah.
He didn't win, all right. I don't think he won.
Uh, I don't know who won at
Yeah,
the
I don't
top
think
of my
he
head, but
won, but
right, right.
definitely deserves a nomination. Um, yeah, I mean, I do agree with you. I think the aging makeup and how they were able to age him is masterful. I think his performance is, man, like I say, it gets me to tears at the end every time. You really do feel like you're right there with him the whole
Mhm.
movie, and I'm invested from the very beginning. When you first meet this character, for me anyway, I'm like on board instantly, and so you go on this journey with him, and he just takes you with you on that journey, and I think he sells it
Yeah.
beautifully.
Yeah, and all the twists and turns that he goes through emotionally. Yeah, great stuff. So it's funny because when we cover these things, I really like to. I don't think I really dove into the production histories like when we watched these movies in the 90s. I think we just watched them as movies. And if there's interesting stuff, I'd learn all that. But doing the research for this, I tried, you look up Wikipedia and there's no production history. There's nothing about their production. I'm like, well, now what am I supposed to do? Like, what angle can I come at this from? And then you have to go and look at other articles. The histories are out there. But I think this is a movie that it's one of those movies where everything works in tandem to be good. I don't think by itself, the writing, the Patrick Sheen Duncan screenplay is fine, but I don't think it's a knockout screenplay. I don't think Stephen Herek's direction, who again we've covered in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, he directed
Hmm.
that. I don't think his direction is very. Even he said it's more workmanlike. It gets the job done. I don't think there's anything spectacular about the direction other than honing the performances and the way that the periods are appropriate or accurate, that kind of stuff. And then it's the background actors, they're all fine. I don't think there's anybody besides Glenne Headly who really gives a performance that's up to snuff with Richard Dreyfuss. I think everybody's performance is just required to be serviceable, I guess. And they
Okay.
all do a good job. I don't think there's a false note in the main performances. But I think that it's all those things working in tandem. I think it's Richard Dreyfuss as the glue holding everything together that really
Yeah.
makes it work. You know what I mean? There's some movies where the filmmaking is the strongest, the writing is the strongest. Even if the direction was bad, the writing would still carry it through. I think if it wasn't for all those basic three things, the writing, the direction, and Dreyfuss working together, I don't think this would have been as strong of a movie. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I believe that the script is adequate. It is good enough. I think the director, I think he's well known. He's done like, like you said, Bill and Ted's. He did Rockstar. He's
Mhm.
done what, Mighty Ducks and
Yep,
like
yep.
101
Critters.
Dalmatian. Yeah, Critters
Right.
back in the 80s.
Hmm.
Which I've seen by the way.
Yeah, it's a fun
Anyway,
movie.
yeah, I think he's a fine director. He's done some really good movies, really, fine movies. And so you put those three things together, and I think you're on track to make a really good movie.
Right, right. I guess what I'm saying is I just if the writing had been stronger, the direction had been stronger, this would be more masterpiece level than just a
Yeah.
good movie with
This
great
movie does
parts.
kind of get swallowed up. People don't really like, you don't really hear it being talked about very much. So,
Yeah, yeah. It might be the sentimentality, it might be the episodicness of it. But again, looking up the history, I really couldn't find stuff, but I did find at least three interesting tidbits about this. Number one, Patrick Sheen Duncan is one of those screenwriters. He wrote Courage Under Fire, which came out the year after this,
okay.
and wrote a couple other things. But I remember in the 90s paying specific attention to certain screenwriters. Like I'd see their names pop up, or even the 80s, and I'd be like, oh, you perk up. So like Lowell Gans and Bob Lou Mandel, who wrote a lot of Ron Howard stuff. Shane Black, like started off, I think in 87 with Lethal Weapon, and then Last Boy Scout, Long Kiss Goodnight. Wesley Strick, who wrote Cape Fear that we covered earlier this season. He wrote a few things, and again, Patrick Sheen Duncan was Daniel Waters. I want to mention him too, but Patrick Sheen Duncan is one of those that is, oh, like I want to pay attention to this, and I think his Courage Under Fire screenplay is good too. But he came up with the story for this. I think he was stuck. He was stuck in traffic in '89. He was in L.A. and there was the Los Angeles Unified School District strike, where that started. I think in May of 1989 of that year, and it lasted like 9 days, something like that, where the teachers wanted to get more pay. They ended up winning 20% increase, a 20% increase in wages, but he was stuck in traffic. And one of the cops that was directing traffic, Duncan asked him, "What's going on?" And the cop was like, "The teachers, they're striking, and so that's why." And so Duncan was kind of perturbed and annoyed. And so as he was stuck in traffic and on the way home, he thought of the whole script and the whole story for Mr. Holland's Opus.
Hmm.
But instead of writing the story about how teachers are terrible and should just shut up and do what they're told, right? He wrote a movie about how no, the teachers aren't given the correct amount of money for what they do for the children, for our future. And he put that together. And then he wrote this script, and I think it was placed in turnaround by Hollywood Pictures. Stephen Herek had just done The Three Musketeers, which was a movie that I debated covering for this season, but then decided against it. But he just come back from that shoot, and he found, I guess, on a stack, this script for Mr. Holland's Opus. And he was like, "What's this? I want to do this with the executives." And they're like, "Oh, that's surprising." Because Richard Dreyfuss had been attached to the screenplay. And that's why, oddly enough, they put it in turnaround because nobody wanted to work with Dreyfuss at this time. And
Really?
looking into that, what happened is Dreyfuss became such a star during the 70s. You know, he won the Oscar for Goodbye Girl, who was in Jaws, Close Encounters, like a lot of really good classic movies, right? And I think it went to his head, even he says that. And he got really addicted to cocaine and alcohol, got into traffic accidents, got into some trouble. And there's no documented, I couldn't find any real documented instances of stuff that happened, but he had a reputation of being notoriously hard to work with.
Hmm.
And so nobody wanted to work with him. And I think as soon as he went and got, kicked the habit and was able to go into rehab and kind of get better, Dreyfuss realized I've been a dick. Like he's very open about that, or he has
Okay.
been. And so he decided I want to make a comeback, and so he did it with this. Again, it took Stephen Herek to say, "Yeah, let's get Dreyfuss in here and let's make this happen." And Dreyfuss being open to doing this performance, that kind of thing. It's odd because you look at his Dreyfuss's 80s input, like Down and Out in Beverly Hills, Tin Man, Stakeout, which we covered, Nuts, Moon Over Parador, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. The American President, he has that. I think it's uncredited in that one. He had a good run in the 80s, so I'm not sure. And he was working, so it's not like he was blacklisted. I'm just curious. I don't know. Could you, from those movies that I just mentioned, was Dreyfuss off, or was he still just Richard Dreyfuss that we knew of?
No, I mean, honestly, that's surprising to know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that he had a cocaine addiction, that he was like getting in car accidents and things. I had no idea about any of that stuff, or that he was hard to work with.
Mm.
I would think the opposite. I would think just from when you see his work, that you think that he's professional, that he's like, clean and sober and all that. But yeah, like I say, it's surprising to find that out.
Yeah, and so I don't really care what celebrities do in their off time as long as they're not murdering people or molesting people, you know what I mean? So I don't really look into that history, and so this I just thought since I'm looking into the production, like what Rich, I'm the same with you. I was like, why was Richard Dreyfuss not working? Because it looked like he was working to me. And I don't know if it's the humility that hit him that was able to get this kind of performance out of him, but whatever happened, I'm glad that it did.
Hey, one thing I want to mention real quick,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I talked
yeah.
about his performance.
Right, right.
Um, it's it's also interesting to me. The one thing I thought that was like a small detail, but his character doesn't learn sign language as well as everyone else does. And you would think if you have a deaf child, you would devote everything in it to
Yeah, yeah.
learn this thing so you can talk to your child. And
Hmm.
he doesn't put the effort into it, so he doesn't know it. And when I first watched it, I thought, oh, he just didn't learn sign language well enough for the movie. But no,
Hmm.
no, no. The character didn't learn it well enough
Yeah,
because he was too focused on everything else. You know what I mean?
right.
And so that sells too. And I thought that was a great little detail that I didn't notice the first time I saw it.
Yeah, there's a lot of really fun details in here. I guess I mentioned before this movie is it feels very episodic. Again, it's a kind of like Disney-fied version of Goodbye, Mr. Chips, like that the classic movie with Robert Donat, that kind of thing. But it's also different from a lot of the other teacher movies like Stand and Deliver or Lean on Me or Dangerous Minds, where these teachers just walk in and they change or Dead Poet Society even, where they walk in and they change the lives of the students just in this one class, and they're different because they have this one great teacher, and even though the teacher might be kicked out at the end of the term or the year or whatever, like they still, I'm a better person because I like that this is different because it's an entire lifespan, it's an entire career's worth of affecting these people. And I guess you could maybe split this movie up into different chapters. I don't know if, and because it feels like something, if this is based on a novel, it feels like something that you would just study maybe a chapter at a time to figure out how it applies to the overall narrative, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So I was thinking about like, how would you split this apart? And I think, well, you could split it apart by maybe the students, like have each chapter or each section or each act. I'm not sure if you'd want to split this act and this movie into like 7 acts or something like that, or 7 different, you know how they have like the titles that come up, chapter one or whatever. So you could split it up by Gertrude Lang, by Lewis Russ, by Coltrane Holland. They deal with that like him as a kid, like the chapter part one or something like that. Mr. Stadler, they didn't give him a first name. Rowena Morgan, and then you go back to Coltrane Holland, and then I think a great final chapter would be Glenn Holland, because again, like we talked about, it's Mr. Holland learning. The other, again, the whole movie is about how Holland becomes a better teacher and a better person, right? But
Yeah.
I think he learns that through the kids that he's teaching. And I think that's an interesting way to show character growth. And then you have like maybe interstitials in between that are like you have stuff with Cole that's interspersed in between each story, so you can build to the main chapter on him later. I don't know. What did you think about that? I mean, what do you think of the episodicness of, and would you separate it into different chapters?
I think the way they did it actually works. I can see your point as far as like maybe if it was a novel that would work, and but I don't think it hurts the movie. I think the episodic of it, sorry, the episodicness of it
Uh-huh.
works fine, and I think I don't mind it, and it plays well for me. I'm able to follow along just fine, and I it goes along with the whole aging of the character, and it's kind of fun to see that happen as you progress with the movie.
Right.
Um, I don't know. I don't think it would hurt it if it did it that way, but I don't think it wouldn't hurt it either. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's fine the way it is if you want to keep it.
Right. Yeah, I think I guess what I'm basically saying is it kind of plays like a novel. You know what I mean? Like that, this is how a novel would read. I'm
Yeah,
curious because I'm big on like what's act one, what's act two, what's act three. And I don't think this movie really, you can split it maybe into 3 acts. I'm sure you can. I just think it's more interesting doing it from he learns different things through different
yeah,
teaching styles, through different instruments, through different students, that kind of, and as a whole, he gets to learn to be a better dad and a better father, so that all of that is out of the way and taken care of, so we can switch and just focus on him and the impact that he's had. Because at the point where he's what, 62 or something like that, he's got no more qualms. Like he's a great teacher, everybody loves him, but now it's to the point where, yeah, they're getting rid of the arts department, right? They're cutting all the arts, and now he's just when what does he say is like I was drugged into this kicking and screaming, and now it's the only thing I want to do,
yeah,
right? I
yeah.
love that line. But I guess yeah, maybe we can talk about like each different chapter. I mean, out of all of those stories, what's your favorite section of this movie? What's the part that really gets you?
All right. I like the Rowena part.
Beside the end, sorry, beside
I,
the
I
end.
like the Rowena part.
Okay.
And mainly because it they do the whole Gershwin review, and
Yeah.
that's always fun to watch. Theater productions, and then
Right.
she, the actress, what's her name again? Jean
Jean Louisa
Louisa.
Kelly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She's striking in this movie. Like she's younger, obviously, and she just
Right.
looks great. And the one I just like watching these scenes mainly because I like noticing how off center her eyes are and how one's higher than the other. And I
Okay.
can't help but like just keep staring at her eyes and how one's lifted up higher than the other one. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, I think she's beautiful and I think it's really
Mhm.
fun to just watch those scenes. I think she has a great voice and
Right.
I love watching that whole sequence. And yeah, it's awkward because she's hitting on him and she wants him to leave with it and the whole thing, but it, it it's nice to see him, reject it and stay with his wife and family, so that's kind
Right.
of satisfying. But yeah, I just like that whole thing. The whole Rowena section is probably my favorite part of the movie.
Okay. Well, I remember the four of us guys going gaga for her. I think especially Mike. Mike Farmer was the one that was like, "Who is this?" Like that was
Yeah.
his whole. But you're right. She's very striking, and She's shot in a way, and she's presented in a way, and she's written in a way where, yeah, I think you're supposed to be attracted to her, right? So that was the whole thing.
She
And
has
I,
this moment where, sorry,
go
where
ahead, go ahead.
she would like after she sings, she like breathes like
Yeah.
and you go, "Oh my gosh." It's like anyway.
Well, it's a great moment because I think the reason she becomes attracted to Glenn is because he's giving her the attention and feeding into her passion in a way that I don't think anybody else has done.
Yeah.
Like her boyfriend comes and picks her up later and is like, Ro, you ready? Like he doesn't really treat like what she's doing as something serious. The fact that Glenn talks to her in a way, and when he pulls her aside and says, "You singing someone to watch over me, you gotta feel it, right? This is about longing and pain and love and stuff." And the look on her face as she's listening to him is like, "Oh, she's a goner for this guy, right? He's really getting to her basic instincts, I guess." But I guess my question, and then I do want to talk a little bit about more about this section, is do you feel like, because I tried to listen to a couple podcasts today to listen to different perspectives, and out of the three or four that I listened to, two of them were like, "This is the most complete unnecessary section. Like they did not have to have this. It's so gross. I don't want this in here." And I was wondering, I wanted to ask you, do you think, as a story about teachers and everything that they face, do you think this whole Rowena section is necessary and adds to that? And also, do these podcasters just feel that way because it makes them uncomfortable and they don't want to think about that stuff, and so they just rather not deal with it? What do you think? Sorry,
Well,
two-tiered
that's a
question.
possibility, but I think you need it because I think teachers are faced with this, problem. There's been lots of stories and cases where, teacher-student
Right.
relations have, gone too far. So I like it. I think it's good. It adds a little bit of a conflict, and you're kind of rooting, like I say, you're rooting for them not to go with her,
Yeah.
or maybe you are. I don't know, but I'm just saying, like I think it works, and I like that it brings that conflict in there. Um, and plus, she's just so pretty. She's so fun to look at.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you got to have that part of the story in there.
Right.
Um,
Well, do you think the way that people watch movies now is they just don't want to feel uncomfortable? I mean, it's supposed to
it
make you
does
feel
make you
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point of it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, sure, that's probably part of it. In fact, I'm not gonna, say names or say anything, but I have heard a story of, one of our teachers
Mm.
who crossed the line,
Okay.
and so it does happen.
Yeah, it does
So it's
happen.
true to life.
Like I said, I think it's necessary. I also think the movie is building, again, it's just like you said. I like that you brought up that he doesn't really learn the ASL stuff because it's just another thing that he has to deal with as he's trying to be a composer. He'll learn enough to get by, but he's got all these other responsibilities that he needs to worry about, and that's where his focus is, right? He doesn't have that awakening yet. The whole movie, even though it's split like I in my mind as different chapters about different students, all these different students are teaching him to become the man that he eventually becomes, right? And so the movie is leading you to the point where he's going to leave his wife because she's mad at him all the time. He doesn't get to write, she doesn't listen to him, he doesn't get to write all his stuff, like she doesn't give him the opportunity to do that and everything. Even though, again, we're not supposed to think that. We're supposed to, yeah, you need to split your responsibilities. We do side with the wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think we're 100% in his corner. I don't think we're meant to be. That's why we're uncomfortable with him maybe going off with Rowena. And so I just think that story wise, it's structured in a way where it's leading you to that. It just doesn't come out of nowhere. I think it's necessary for him to realize when Iris sees Rena's name in the program after he's told her he wrote a song about her. And she keeps, as she's watching her sing Someone to Watch. And the note I had is, boy, like she's really selling the longing, staring at Mr. Holland. Like, I wonder why she's selling the longing so well. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think I think Iris even senses that. And when Glenn says to her and Cole, like, they're going to have a party, like, do you want to come with? And you can see in her face, like, no. Uh, I don't know if it's a look of, I'm going to let you do what you need to do, or I've just resigned myself. That's one of the things that's great about Glenne Headly here. She gives looks that you can read as different ways. It's not just a
Yeah.
two-dimensional performance. And we'll come back and we'll talk about her. But when he goes to the bus stop, which, wow, that's really borderline inappropriate, right? Even though he's setting her off and says, I've got a place for you to stay. Call this person when you get there. They're waiting for you. I think that's necessary. Kissing her on the cheek, maybe that's not maybe, that's too much, right? Don't do
Mhm.
that. That's what really pushes that line. But when he goes home and tells Iris, and I love you, and she says, I know, because he's come home. I mean, that's there's a thing with audiences today besides the de-aging, digital de-aging stuff, where people, I think, they don't like complicated or dark characters. They want other characters to be two-dimensional heroes that don't have any shades of gray, that don't have any problematic issues about. And I just think that's a really weird way to approach movies. I think it makes him human, right? He's a human being that has desires and anger and issues and all that stuff. To look at Mr. Holland and go, this guy's an evil person, I think that's kind of a dismissive way. You know what I mean? It's the kind of thing that kids are looking at today. Is that something that have you ever sensed that from people, or your kids or their friends or anything like that watching movies
Um,
today?
I don't know, but I will say that I think yes, he's human and we all have flaws. Like we're
Right.
all flawed. And so I
Right.
think that's what makes a great character is when you have a character flaw or character flaws that they're
Uh-huh.
they're having to overcome or deal with. And that's the whole point. You know, the point is for us to get improve and to get better. And
Yeah.
so but I think nowadays people are gotten so used to having like the anti-hero or like the bad guy who's bad, but he's better than the worst guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I
Right.
think that's what they're used to because they've been kind of raised on that. But um, I don't know. I think we have to understand, like, us as humans, we're flawed and we need to work on those flaws and get better.
Right.
I think that's what this movie's about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that people will watch movies and not like feeling tense or not like, oh, this character's flawed. And then if you wrote it the other way where a character has no flaws and there's nothing to overcome and there's no tension where, you walk into a room and there's no like opposing. I know Aaron Sorkin, again, another 90s writer, says that when you have two characters in a room, the drama is always about a character wants something and then there's a character that opposes that goal.
Yep.
Without that, you have a dead space. You have just a movie and a story and a scene that just is flat. And it's
And life's
funny.
not like that.
Yeah, life isn't like that. And so audiences will watch a scene like that where there's no conflict and go, why didn't that do anything for me? Oh, well, I don't like tension. You know what I mean? It's like I don't
Yeah.
think you're processing what you're watching. Anyway, so it's uncomfortable. It's necessary. I think you're right. Like she's still very easy on the eyes even today. So I think the movie really helped Jean Louisa Kelly's career. But let me ask you, this whole section with the play, does this give you huge nostalgia watching and remembering all the plays that we were in? Because it does for me every time I
It does.
watch it. There's a scene in particular where it has all the different kids doing the auditions, and I can look at every one of those and go, oh, that's this person. That is completely I recognize, even though it's not their face, it's the way that they act and the way that they move. And like, I know that person. Is that something that what scene I'm talking about where they're
Oh
all
yeah.
showing the different?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm definitely taken back to our drama days and our auditioning for plays and everything because yeah, we got some funny stories if you want to tell them. I don't know if you want to tell those stories or not, but
Right.
yeah, it definitely takes me back. I what was I going to say? I actually put an audition scene in a film that I made because of this movie, and I tried to mimic the same kind of stick where they have the whole like bad
Right.
audition and saying next and all that thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of copied it in one of my films, but
Right.
yeah.
There, when it has, again, it has all the different people, and then when it has, what is his name? Bill Meister, right? When it shows him dancing with all those football stars and they're not getting the choreography right. I remember there was a play that we tried out for in ninth grade. Well, I was in ninth grade, you were in eighth, and it required there to be a dance number. And I remember some embarrassing dance moves that I did. I'm surprised. I guess I got the part that didn't have any dancing, so maybe that's good.
Yeah.
But that part really hit me. I like the again when Rowena does that, and then she stops and she breathes. She's finally gotten it out, right? She's finally out there. She's finally on stage. Like, what do you think? I think that's what the breath is for, and it's taken their breath away. I feel like that's what we aim for when we audition for a lot of these plays. I don't know. I feel like that's the aside from the uncomfortableness, I think that's the section that really gets me because there's just so much in there. And it reminds me, again, the whole movie reminds me of Kryman, and it reminds me of Miss Euler and all these teachers that had such a good, solid impact on me. Where, I think it's a cliche where you have these teachers that do make a difference in your life. And I think that's what this movie does so well is we all had a Mr. Holland, right? And it just I don't know, it kind of sells that emotion. That's basically what you were talking about before, right?
Yeah. Also, having been a music teacher, I've taught a lot of people how to play the drums and how to play the guitar. And you don't really know how you're affecting them during the lessons and how, you watch them progress and learn and everything. But
Mhm.
I've had some students that kept in touch with me over the years, like
Wow.
decades. And they're still like, oh, thanks so much for what you taught me and everything. I'm not, you're surprised, like, really? That meant that much to you? But if it were
Yeah.
me, yeah, it would mean a lot to me too. I still think of our high school teachers and what they taught me and how they affected me and everything.
Yeah.
So, like I said, you don't realize the impact you have on people until, you know, later.
Right, right. Okay. So that you talking about that does again, you're the resident musician on the podcast, right? And so you have a whole history of that being in bands. I wanted to talk a little bit about Michael Kamen doing the music for this, and then we're going to talk about your what you think of the music kind of sections and the
Okay.
band and the playing and stuff like that. But Michael Kamen, we know him from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, from Die Hard, from the Lethal Weapon movies that he did with Eric Clapton, David Sanborn. Brazil, he did the music for that. Iron Giant, again, a very prolific composer that
Hmm.
he's not quite, and again, he passed away. I think he had a heart attack in 2004. So he was 55 and he passed on way too soon. But I don't think he's in the same league as, again, a John Williams or a Hans Zimmer, that kind of thing. But whenever you see his name, you're kind of like, oh, like, I like this guy. Let's see what you've got for me, right?
Yeah.
But he was also basically a rock star before this. He was a known orchestrator and a conductor. He worked with and this is where I wanted to get to. He worked with Pink Floyd, David Bowie, Eric Clapton, like I mentioned, Metallica, Queen, Kiss, Bon Jovi, The Eurythmics. Annie Lennox, when she won the Oscar for Best Song for Return of the King, she thanked him in her speech, like dedicated her award to him
Okay.
because he helped with some of their music. Queensryche,
Hmm.
Rush, Def Leppard, Bryan Adams, Guns N' Roses, Kate Bush. Like he's worked with all these people. And again, when I was reading that, I feel dumb because I know he was a musician and worked with other bands and all this, but I was like, wow, Queen? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like Pink Floyd, like these people sought him out. It's not like he had to try out for stuff. He earned a reputation as doing like mixing classical and rock kind of together. But there
Yeah.
are a couple bands in there that, as I was reading them earlier today, I'm like, oh, Johnny's gonna like that. What are some
Hmm.
of the bands that kind of stick out for you?
Well, all the ones you mentioned. Um, however, here's what I remember. I remember the Metallica and the orchestration, the live concert they did where Michael came
S&M,
in. Yeah,
right?
S&M, where he orchestrated the orchestra behind Metallica, and he had the band playing and the orchestra and everything. And I freaking love it. I mean, it's you don't understand. I mean, I guess maybe you do, but like people who don't really get into heavy metal as much as
Mhm,
maybe I do, like it translates really well to orchestra. And
mhm,
so there's actually like a straight just orchestration of Metallica songs you can purchase where there's no drums or distorted guitars or anything. It's just strings and
mhm,
woods and everything, all that kind of stuff. And it sounds amazing. It sounds like it should be an orchestra. You know what I mean? And
mhm.
one funny side note is when I was a missionary, we were allowed to listen to orchestration. And so one of my companions found this Metallica album that was, orchestration. So we're like, hey, that counts.
It
We can listen
counts.
to it. So even
Yeah.
though we were like kind of breaking the rules slightly, anyway, and also I remember watching. Also, there's a video of Queensryche doing the similar thing where they played a
Mm.
live concert with Michael Kamen directing the orchestra, and yeah, I think it's just it melds beautifully together, and it's magical. I think it's great. I think he's
Right.
really good at what he does.
Okay. So as far as, and again, I mentioned that because music is such a huge part of this. And I love that, again, other sections, when you look at the first section, which is Gertrude Lang, right? How he learns, he has to settle in the groove, how he learns that music is the great communicator, how all of a sudden his defenses are down, and you just see him like, he says, I just wanted to make sure that I've made absolutely no connection with you whatsoever. And he stops and he's sincere with them, and he's like, let's talk about music. What kind of music do you like? Right. Even though that one kid's like rocket, like classicals, like brown nose, or that kid, that's pretty funny. But the way that they connect with music, and he plays the song from the toys, right? The way that he explains later the story of Beethoven in the seventh symphony, all that. I
Hmm.
love that he's able to find this great connector, and he helps these kids. Again, it's really hokey, it's really corny, how he's able to teach Gertrude, just think of the sunset, and magically she's able to play. But that's what you want. It's like you're at a point where you're just comfortable and you're yourself, and that's where the beauty comes from, right? I love that whole thing and that whole connection. But I wanted to ask you, being in a few bands and being a musician, being a composer yourself, being a drummer, how do these scenes, kind of like the audition process, how do the scenes in the band classes, how do they work for you?
All right. So I was going to tell you this. My pet peeve when I'm watching a movie where an actor has to play an instrument or pretend to play an instrument, if I can tell that he's not playing, like it's my pet peeve. I hate it. I hate watching an actor pretend to play the piano or the guitar or the drums, or when the drummer in the background's off and he's not playing the drum beat that you're hearing in the music. And
Yeah.
I don't care what's happening up front on the screen. If I'm watching the drummer in the background and he's not on in sync with the drums in the song, I can't watch the scene. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And there are a few movies that it's just horrible. Like one example I can think of is Sweet and Lowdown, where Sean Penn is playing the guitar on stage, and it
Mm.
starts by just kind of showing his face, and you're like, okay, I can kind of believe he's playing because he's kind of getting into it, and you see like maybe the back of the guitar, and you see his fingers kind of like going up and down the neck, and you're like, okay, I can believe that because it looks kind of like where he would be playing, and then it shows the front, and he's like way off, and his fingering's off, and the picking's off, and everything's off, and you're like, he's obviously not playing that instrument, and it drives me insane. But with Mr. Hollow Opus, Dreyfuss, he actually studied for like 4 months
Yeah.
to like learn how to simulate playing the piano to look like he really was playing. And
Right.
there are scenes where you start on his face and you pan down to his fingers, and the fingering is his fingers, and he's actually playing along with the keys. So, and it's believable. And you're like, that looks like he's playing.
Yeah.
But you realize that he really wasn't. Yes, he's had experience, in past movies playing piano, and he, like I say, he studied for like 4 months. So I can buy it, and I'm like, okay, it's passable and it's believable that he's playing, even though I know he's not. There might be some scenes where he plays a few keys here and there where he
Right.
learned how to do it. But like, you think of the pianist with Adrian Brody. He
Mm.
learned how to play the piano for that part, and he's actually playing, and you
Mhm.
can tell he's actually playing. And when that scene where he's mimicking it and miming it in the air and hitting every note, it's like, wow,
Mhm.
he really knows what he's doing, and that's the kind of stuff I really am impressed by. Or even in the Rocker with Rainn Wilson,
Uh-huh.
not the Rocker. Is it Rocker or is it? Yeah, the Rocker,
Rockstar?
right? No,
One of them?
Rockstar is Mark Wahlberg. I think the
Right.
Rocker is Rainn Wilson, but he's actually playing the drums.
Ah,
Actually, is him playing, and
okay.
he again he studied with a drum teacher and he learned how to do it. But again, if you watch an actor and they're not playing it right, it's my pet peeve. I cannot stand it. But they do a good job in this movie faking it, so it passes.
It passes the not the Bechdel test, whatever the equivalent is.
The Johnny Craddock test.
The Johnny Crad the Craddock test. I know that also Dreyfuss worked in a movie in 1980 called The Competition with Amy Irving, where he played a piano prodigy. So he kind of knew what he was doing already. I think Michael Kamen made fun of him on set because when he was pretending to play, he would mostly use muscle memory with his like
Yeah.
remembering that. And so Dreyfuss laughs about that. He's like, yeah, that makes sense because he got the motions down. I think that's what's important,
Hmm.
as long as you sell that. And yeah, so that's great. So would you? I think you talked about in Back to the Future. Like, let me ask you, Michael J. Fox looks like he's playing guitar
He is.
because he did.
Yeah.
That thing you do, they all learned how to play their
They
instruments.
all learned.
Remember,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and even some Master and Commander. I know that Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany learned how to play the instruments that they played,
Oh,
like
okay.
below decks. And
Okay.
so you're right. I like when they put that extra effort in, so they're not half-assing everything.
Hmm.
And that does that. I wouldn't know what to look for, but that does count in the backgrounds. Like if you can tell they're not doing anything, it's like what. why did we not pay attention to that? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, all of that. I think it's great. So I guess the we're talking about performers, right? I want to talk about the performances. Let's talk about Richard Dreyfuss for a second, just a little bit more. I like I said, I don't know if it's the humility, him coming down from his cocaine high or whatever that helped him refocus. I know, like you said, he won for Goodbye Girl, all that stuff. He's a very celebrated actor. It's frustrating to me that everything comes down to awards because I think this performance like is very award worthy. It's perfect. There's nothing every note that he hits, sorry for the pun, but every note that he hits in this performance is spot on. And I buy everything that he does. I love, again, when he shows up in 1964 and he's got the brown hair. And I know he was about 48 when they shot this and he's playing like 30, 32, and he sells it. He looks like, and I don't know if it's the makeup or if it's his motions or what he's doing or his performative things, his inner, like, I just think that it really sells that. And then even if you cut, like you, to the very end when he's in his 60s and he's walking down the hall of melancholy because he knows he's being fired, right? He's with his body language and the way he's hunched over, the way that he's walking, the way that he's dressed, it completely sells that he has lived 30 years during this movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know, however he modulated his performance, I just think it's perfect in here. It's just such a standout. I mean, was there anything else that you wanted to maybe talk about with his performance? Any specific details?
No, like I say, he hits everything just right. He sells the comedy, he sells the drama. At the end, when he gets that tear in his eye where he's leading the music, it's just, like I say, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And we buy his every foible, right? We buy his every
Yeah.
flaw. We understand. I like the meta idea of, Cayman's music, like his theme playing, and it's like an overture, except I like the meta idea of Holland standing up and he's guiding, he's conducting the orchestra as he's going. I think that's a very fun kind of idea, even though it's all in his head. You can tell he's a musician. But what do you think of the at the very end? What do you think of that piece in American Symphony?
All
Do you
right.
think it's a
I'm
good piece
I'm
or?
glad you asked because one thing I always kind of wondered is, well, you never see him work on all aspects of it. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of like, here's what I want to know. How did the kids and the students and the people get hold of his music and everything that he put together for this opus? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how did they get a hold of it? Did his wife give it to them? They had to make copies for everybody? They
Uh-huh.
had to practice it. They had to rehearse it. This had to be like a big thing. And it's always like, how did they do that? And they don't really explain how that was done. It's just
Yeah.
all of a sudden they all know the parts, they all know what they're, and it's kind of silly in a way because it kind of throws in all kinds of different styles of music, which I guess is okay because you are covering like decades of, you
Right.
know, music. So I get that, but and it's not bad. I
Mhm.
just think like maybe it could have been better. I don't know. I mean, my question was like how do they all get the music? And like how did they all
Right.
know what to play? It's just that's all it was.
Right.
But
And
no,
that,
I mean I liked it though. I did
yeah,
like it
yeah.
though.
Well, I mean, my question is, did he actually complete it? Because it never showed, like,
Well,
when,
that's what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you don't see that process. You see the beginnings of it, but you don't
Yeah.
see the
Did
rest of it.
they have to orchestrate it themselves? Like, did he just have this 3 minute piece just ready to go? Like, I can buy that, yeah, they were practicing in their off time and like Iris put this all together, like behind his back to make that work. But yeah, there are some questions that just linger, like, I didn't think that he finished it. How did you get this piece? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing. I just know that for the next picture show, Keith Phipps and Scott Tobias, one of them, they usually bring up, they call it the Mr. Holland's Opus syndrome, where you have this movie that's building to a piece that's supposed to sell the emotions, and one of them does not like the piece at all, and so he says that he giggles all the way through the ending because as a piece of music, he just doesn't think it's a good piece of
Okay,
music,
okay.
which it's cheesy, and I get it, like
Yeah.
all that. I just think that's pretty funny, but again, the I think so. When you talk about emotions, that part gets me. The other part that really gets me is the part with Cole, right? I love that it builds to that point where he realizes, yeah, he hasn't been, and so he's able to go. It's usually his wife. It's usually Iris that goes and organizes everything with the deaf school, and so he goes and does that and builds this thing for Cole. And it just the way that he, again, the whole John Lennon, the whole Beatles kind of a motif. It pays off with Beautiful Boy.
Yeah.
I just think it's great. But skipping to Glenne Headly, and then I want to talk about some other parts of her performance. We talked about her during Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Right.
And there's a part in this section at the with the climax of Cole's story where again we are seeing Holland do the sign language. He's singing to his son. You see on Cole's face just he's doesn't know what to feel because his dad's finally connecting with him. You know he's emotional and he just doesn't have anything else to do besides look at his dad and just with awe and with love, right? They end, and I think the obvious thing to do, again, this whole movie is so the pushback on it is it's so maudlin, it's so sentimental, it pushes those emotions on you that I understand if somebody pushes back against it. But the fact that I guess you could have gone all histrionic and over the top with Iris, sobbing. We mentioned this in the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels episode where she's sobbing, isn't my husband grand? And I'm so in love with him and I've got such a great life. She doesn't do that. When it's over and they start applauding, it cuts to her face and she does something so interesting. She looks over at Cole to see
Mhm.
his reaction. That's what this is all about. And that underplays the moment beautifully, where I think if she'd been crying, that would have been like too much, like too over the top. But because, like I mentioned before, where Holland goes off to spend time with the kids after the play's over, and she has a look on her face of, is she resigned to him running off? Like, is she confused about what he's going to do? She plays that scene so well. What is there another part of this movie? I think we're maybe in agreement. What's the other part of this movie where she
Yeah.
really nails it?
Yes. The other part is when they're talking about when they discovered that their son is deaf and that she has a hard time, communicating with him. And the son's like on the floor, like banging a toy
Yeah.
and like,
It builds,
Yeah, Mr.
slamming
Holland's
doors.
like, kind of they're yelling back and forth at each other. And she finally just like blows up and like drops to the floor and is like, I want to talk to my son. Like that for me is like, it gives me chills. It's one of
Yeah.
the best moments, acting moments in the whole movie.
I think that works so well because this is called Mr. Holland's Opus. And when the movie points out that Iris is just as invested in everything, and she's to the point where he hasn't been there and he's kind of poo-pooing the idea of putting him in a special school, and it's just Cole again going just throwing a tantrum, banging doors, and like you said, toys, and it crescendos so again like a piece of music. It
Hmm.
crescendos so well to where she just breaks down, and you're right, every just thinking about it, it gives me the chills of how powerful her line read is because you get it and you're like I said, the whole movie we're in Holland's corner. We understand his flaws, but at that moment we're like, man up, right? Do something to be a part of this family and help out. And he does. But I
Yeah.
think he needs that moment where she just completely breaks down, not just on him. You can tell that she really loves this boy and
Yeah.
she has only so much she can do, and it's just built to this moment. I think it's beautiful. I
Yeah.
love the writing earlier where she's wakes him up or whatever, and he says, does the sun come up this early? And she says, yeah, I took a picture in case it doesn't happen again. They've got a good fun chemistry. I like the John Coltrane story he tells her to smooth over his reaction to her being pregnant. I like when he gets back on the first day or whatever, and she's giving him a massage, and she's like, okay, so with my photography, with you only have to teach for this amount of time, and then we can do what we really want to do. I love that moment because it's a conversation that me and my wife have had on many occasions, and I'm guessing that you've done too.
Every night.
Every night, I just love moments in movies where I'm like, that's me. Like I recognize myself right here. That pulls you in a way where you're invested now because you see yourself on screen.
Yeah.
Were there any other performances besides her? And again, R.I.P. I think she had an embolism or something and died in 2017. And
Hmm.
then Jay Thomas, who plays Bill, like he died in 2017. I know Jay Thomas from Cheers. I know that he was Rhea Perlman, Carla's kind of love for a little bit until he got killed by a Zamboni in the show. Were there any other performances that are standouts to
Oh,
you?
I think the adult of the teenage Cole does a really good job.
Yeah.
So I like his performance.
Okay. Macy, you have any thoughts on him in here? Is he just doing
Oh,
the
he's just
Village
being
Macy
William
thing?
H. Macy.
It's the same thing with Dukakis. She starts out hard and then ends up being like, you're my favorite teacher. And it's like I said, I think I don't mean to denigrate the other performers, right? I think besides Dreyfuss, besides Headley, I think everybody else just showed up and did what they needed to do. There's not a
Yeah.
false note in any of these other actors, but they aren't standouts. But that's not a flaw because you've got Dreyfuss and you've got Headley that's backing
Yeah.
him up. And so I think that's enough.
Well, the other standout, I guess, is the what's her name again?
Jean Louisa Kelly.
Louisa Kelly. I don't know
Right.
why I figured her name. Just because, her voice and her
Right.
looks.
Yeah. It really, again, you with her character, I don't know if anybody would have been the temptation for Mr. Holland. You know what I mean? She had to, like I said, how he sparks the passion in her. She's sparking the passion. When she says to him, you could be writing great music. You could be spending time doing what you want to do. You can do that with me. I will not be holding you back. Right. That's what he's attracted to. He's like, you, if we go off together, yeah, I'll be abandoning my family, but I'll be doing what I want to do. And I don't have to worry about all this stupid school and kid thing. Right.
Hmm.
And that's what a temptation is. It's like not something that you should follow. It's basically just a test. And I think if she wasn't a strong performer, I don't think that would have worked. So I think it works
Right.
very
I
well for
agree.
her. But are there so that's basically Mr. Holland's opus. I mean, obviously if you've seen it, we don't have to go beat by beat. I think I've mentioned all the yeah, Dreyfuss, the music, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. Holy crap, you feel that. I like that
Hmm.
they've got Julian Lennon singing Cole's song at the end. It's a very,
Yeah.
again, generational kind of thing there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about with this movie?
Um, I don't know. I thought I had something, but I think we covered it all.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me think.
Okay.
If I think about something, then we'll cover it later.
Okay. Well, I guess the last thing that I want to close out on is the scene where Holland, like he's been told the and he tells what's Macy's character's name? It's just the vice principal,
I
Gene.
forget.
He calls him
Gene.
Gene. It's a funny note because if I respect you, I'm going to call you Mister, and he calls Gene, right? That's a sign of what he thinks of him. But when he finds that out and he goes to the school board, Dreyfuss's acting in there is so angry and so personal that I think he really sells that. And yeah, I wanted to read a quote from him. He gave an interview to the Oklahoman in 1996 where he talks about this thing, and I think it's important for arts. He says, I think there is a basic misunderstanding of the arts. Some people think the arts are for people who want to play the clarinet or learn how to draw, when in fact the arts are part of a larger curriculum that goes into the making of a creative, imaginative mind. Art allows for the creation of an imagination out of which comes the answers that solve our political problems and our social problems. Art creates the well-rounded mind of a civic person. Without that art, there is no creativity. And without that creativity, there are no answers to political problems that face us, and things get worse and worse, a kind of constant degradation, a degradation. It is an aspect of civic terror and national self-destruction to even contemplate prioritizing the arts as if they are not as worthy as the science, not as worthy as the math.
Hmm.
In fact, the answers to the great questions of science come because art in conjunction with science creates a broad platform of imagination. You can no more solve the problems of the universe without the Sistine Chapel than you can jumping off the Brooklyn Bridge. I think what he's saying there is, yeah, I think math and English composition and reading comprehension are the basics for survival. But once you learn those things, that's when you're able to turn them into an art. That's where your imagination comes in, and that's what's important to find yourself, and like he does, right? To find yourself in these things. It's funny that the movie talks about rock and roll being of the devil because it causes raucous feelings in people. I don't think that's necessarily evil, but the fact that people will look at art and shut it down because it causes crazy feelings in people to act out and not act logically, I think that's wrong. I don't know. What do you think of that?
Well, I do agree that art is important. I think it does make a person more well-rounded. And well, here's the thing. With my career, like having had all the acting training that I've had, I'm only able to do my job because of all that acting training and because of all my experience on film sets.
Mm.
Everything I learned on a film set, I've been able to apply in my job, in my
Wow.
career. And
Yeah.
it's crazy to me to think that when I look back on my life, my acting uh, experience and my experience in film has prepared me for the job that I do now, which is nothing like what I was doing in those fields. But
Yeah.
it still helped. I still able to apply those things, and so I think it's important. The arts are very important, and maybe as equally important as math and science.
Right. Okay. It's just you need well-rounded kids, right? I think that's as the movie staying power, I think is saying that's the part that can stand out today as well as it could stand out in 1995, right? It's like when you shut down the art, you shut down imagination, and that's not something that should be thought of or even done.
Yeah.
So again, that's Mr. Holland's opus. Bucket list wise, I think that's a very important movie. Man, I can't say enough about Dreyfuss in this movie. He's so great. But what do we have? What do we have next time? What's your movie that you want to cover for the next
Well,
episode?
it's going to be a new year, 1996, if I'm
Yep,
not
yep.
mistaken. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to pick A Time to Kill.
Oh,
Yeah,
Grisham.
Matthew McConaughey. Yes. Samuel L. Jackson, Sandra Bullock, the whole crew.
Right. All right, that's another movie that meant a lot to us when we watched it in theater. So
That's right.
that'd be a fun thing to talk about. So great, let's talk about A Time to Kill next
Yeah.
time. But yeah, I've had a great conversation. I'm really still liking the bucket list stuff. I'm glad we're able to talk about these movies that
Yeah, I'm glad you picked it. It was fun.
yeah, that means something to us. So until next time for NostalgiaCast, I'm Darin Lundberg,
And I'm Johnny Craddock.
and these tests are pathetic. Name an American composer. Your answer was Johann Sebastian Bach.
Play the Sunset.
It's a good one. Right, we'll catch you next time.